The third very important career tips that I will want to make sure all of you take away is take the note. The biggest problem is that we don't often get the feedback we need to inform our self-perception, to understand what is going on around us, and so forth. Giving hard feedback is hard. It's challenging. Not everyone has the skill set to be able to give you a very productive but hard feedback. Even your managers. Not everyone is trained to do that. So a lot of people, guess what, would avoid giving you the hard feedback. And a lot of things that people think about, you won't be able to hear it. You have to see it, you have to observe it. So I focus a lot on unspoken feedback. Take a lot of notes on unspoken feedback. So take the notes means that observing something or hearing something and then really understanding what that means and decide if you agree or disagree with that specific feedback, right? All of us are very exposed, are very known, have experience in getting spoken feedback, where people come to you and say, hey, I think you are emotional in that meeting that we had earlier. Or, I think that you don't have a good executive presence. I think you're being too ambitious. I think. Or your manager may tell you a formal feedback and saying that your performance has decreased last quarter as compared to this quarter, and I think that because X, Y, and Z. When you have a spoken feedback, I always do make sure that I analyze that feedback in 3 ways. Number 1 is, what is being communicated to me? What is the fact? And what is the subjective, what is the objective side of the feedback, and what is the subjective side of the feedback? An example that I can give you was when I first started out career, people would say this comment to me, and it makes me laugh right now. They would come to me and like, what happened to you? You look very mad all the time. And that was a very interesting feedback or observation, right? Looking mad is one thing of what the other people perceive. And I try to ask myself, why do they say that? And what are they looking at? And do I agree? And I quickly realized that I have a resting bitch face, that I don't say anything when I look into a straight eye. I just look mad. Right? And I've really appreciated when the colleague came up to me and said, why do you look mad all the time? I don't agree with the feedback, but I appreciated someone that pointed out to me on something that I never noticed, right? And now moving forward, I may or may not change my behavior, but being aware of the feedback and why someone says something or understanding their point of view really helps me to understand what other people could see as well. Have you ever been in a situation where you went through an interview process and everyone liked you and you thought that you're going to get the interview, you thought you're going to get the role. At the end of it, you didn't get the role. And you want to ask them, they say, well, because there's more competitors out there that are better than you. Is that it? Is that just because there are people better than you? Or is it because there is something else that is lacking that is not being communicated on, being communicated to you? That is one scenario that I see pop up a lot. Or second scenario, you may or may not notice that your manager keeps assigning high priority, high visibility projects to your colleagues and never comes to you. But in your interaction with the manager, everything seems really good. Or if you talk about the feedback or anything formal, everything seems really well. But you know something is not right. And that's where the unspoken note is important. You gotta stop and ask yourself, what are you noticing? What is not being communicated to you? Can you get more clarity? Can you have transparency, radical transparency, and really bring that concern up to the person that you're noticing this behavior from and ask? For example, if your manager does that, literally my advice to all of you, is confront that with your manager and say, dear manager, I'm noticing that I haven't had any projects, high priority projects that you're assigning me to. I just want to make sure that we are aligned on the things that I can bring to the table. And would you agree? So before you say that, I want to make sure that I can also add value. Start with saying the observation that you say, right? I'm noticing that I don't have a lot of high priority projects I'm working on. And ask them to calibrate with you on the feedback that you notice. And ask them, would you agree with my observation? And hear what they say. Do they agree? Do they not agree? Right? And keep asking why and why and why. Get to the root of the problem to see why the decision hasn't been going to the direction that you want it to. I want to make sure that all of you understand this piece as well. Take the note, but you don't have to disagree with. You don't have to agree with all of them. Take the note. Decide if you want to agree or disagree. All notes can be useful, but not all notes are important. As you're observing things, make sure that you don't let the noises cloud your perception. Okay?
Let us, but that was quite descriptive, Haley. Thanks a lot. Go to the next one. Okay, it's an interesting question. It's related to take the notes. Okay, there's a question from Whipple, which is, it's difficult to gather unspoken, gather around unspoken feedback. Can you share a few tips on how I can notice it, right?
Good question. I love that question. So what are some of the tips I've used to notice unspoken feedback? The easiest way, I would say tier 1 easiest way, is to look at people's action, not words. Actions are when someone decides to give something to someone else and not you. That's number 1. Number 2 is body language. You can tell a lot by if people like you or don't like you by their body language. Are they open to you, or are they trying to like close up a little, right? And your managers, they may say feedback like, I really appreciate all your work and all that, but their body language is not telling the same tone. That would be a good note to kind of look into, right? It could be that manager itself just do that for everyone, then it's okay. You kind of validate your hypothesis. So that is another example, is understanding people's action, body language, and differences. So understanding people's baseline. So an example would be, if you start working for me, with me in my earlier team, the very common feedback that I got was like, wow, I don't think Haley likes me. Right? That is a very interesting feedback that a lot of people who first interact with me would get. And as they are spending more time with me, they would realize that she's just really intense, and that it's just her asking a lot of questions, right? So I think that when you start connecting with your own feeling and be curious about exploring a little more, that is also a good way to kind of explore what is not being spoken. So an example that I just given, right? I think Haley doesn't like me. Thinking about a feeling, it makes me feel uncomfortable. Checking with yourself, noticing that, and really explore what makes that happen will be another good way for you to kind of see about it too. And lastly is listen to the words in between lines. Managers cannot say a lot of things. They cannot. Confidentiality about where the team is going, headings, resources, is their job sometimes to dissect and include the communication plan in a very different way, that they can't disclose everything to you. But ask in a different way to see if they will be able to hint you or give you a gray area, and read between lines. I hope that helps.